Now, breaking from the city ground, Forest faithful, brace yourselves, because what I'm about to reveal will shake Nottingham to its very core. A Brazilian wizard has returned to English shores under circumstances that will leave you speechless, rejecting the riches of Manchester City to don the Garibaldi red. A Portuguese winger is willing to sacrifice everything, including his $55,000 per week wages, just to escape what he sees as a sinking ship. A swap deal that could reshape our entire backline is brewing behind closed doors with Spanish giant Sevilla, involving a defender who's never even kicked a ball for us competitively. A $35 million striker target that has the board split down the middle, with some calling it madness and others calling it genius, and contract details that prove Evangelos Marinakis means business like never before, with obligation clauses that would make even Chelsea blush. Each of these bombshells could redefine the future of this historic football club, could determine whether we're genuine European contenders or just another championship yo-yo team pretending to belong among England's elite. The whispers from the city ground corridor suggest something monumental is brewing, something that will echo through the Premier League and beyond, something that will make our rivals question everything they thought they knew about modern football hierarchy. When Manchester City come calling with their unlimited resources and get rejected flat. When Juventus stars choose us over their former clubs, Villa. When Spanish clubs are literally begging for our cast-offs and offering their own stars in return, you know the entire landscape of English football is shifting beneath our feet like tectonic plates before an earthquake. This isn't just transfer business. This is a revolution wrapped in red and white, and it's happening right here in Nottingham, right here at the club that Brian Clough built into European champions. The ghost of the master himself and Peter Taylor are stirring in the stands, because what we're witnessing defies every expectation anyone had for this football club just 3 years ago when we were scrapping in the championship. From second-tier survivors to Europa League participants, from relegation battlers signing loan players to Brazilian international signings worth tens of millions, the transformation has been nothing short of miraculous. Nothing short of the kind of meteoric rise that only happens once in a generation. But hold your breath, Forest faithful, because what comes next will test everything you thought you knew about Nottingham Forest's place in modern football. Will challenge every assumption about what's possible when ambition meets unlimited resources. If you bleed Forest red more than you hate Derby County, if you believe in miracles more than you fear failure, prove your loyalty with a like and subscribe right now. Parte 2, Douglas Luiz Bombshell, 4-500-95. Ao 00 in caracteres. But hold on, the first revelation cuts deeper than Brian Clough's most brutal team talk. Deeper than any tactical masterclass the great man ever delivered. Douglas Luiz has officially signed for Nottingham Forest on loan from Juventus, and the terms of this deal will blow your mind into 1,000 pieces. The 27-year-old Brazilian international who cost the old lady 51 $5 million just 12 months ago in one of the summer's biggest transfers, has chosen the city ground over a return to Aston Villa, where he spent 5 glorious seasons, and even rejected Manchester City's advances in January when Pep Guardiola personally called him begging him to join the citizens. Think about that for a moment. Let it sink into your football-obsessed brain. Manchester City, the Premier League champions, the oil money machine that can afford anyone on the planet, came calling for this lad with a blank check. And he said no because he wanted to wait for us, because he believed in what Nuno Espirito Santo and Evangelos Marinakis are building at this football club. Forest are paying Juventus an initial loan fee of $3 million, which sounds reasonable until you hear what comes next. But here's where it gets absolutely mental, where it becomes clear this isn't just any ordinary loan deal. There's an obligation to buy Klaus worth $25 million based purely on the number of games he plays for us. Meaning if he makes a certain number of appearances, which he absolutely will if he stays fit, we're committed to paying Juventus £25 million to make this permanent. This isn't just a loan, Forest fans. This is a statement of intent that echoes through the corridors of power at every Premier League club. This is Marinakis telling the football world that Nottingham Forest are back and we're not going anywhere. Luiz managed just 877 minutes at Juventus last season, starved of the football that made him a Villa legend for 5 incredible seasons, trapped in a system that didn't understand his qualities, wasted by coaches who couldn't see his genius, and now he's hungry to prove himself in the red of Nottingham Forest. Hungry to show what happens when a Brazilian international is given the freedom to express himself. The lad's own words should give you goosebumps, should make you believe in magic again. I'm really happy to be here. It's a big club, and I decided to come here because I can see the ambition the club has. I am so excited to start with the team and give my best for the shirt and the fans. Ideal when a Brazilian international who's played Champions League football, who's been capped 28 times for his country, who was good enough for Pep Guardiola to personally pursue, chooses us over Manchester City and Aston Villa. You know something extraordinary is happening at the City Ground, something that transcends money and logic and enters the realm of pure footballing destiny. This signing represents everything about Nuno Espirito Santo's vision: quality, experience, Premier League know-how, international pedigree, and the burning desire to make Forest a force in European competition once again after 3 decades in the wilderness. Ross Wilson didn't mince his words either, calling it another addition to the squad that will bring significant quality to the group, specifically mentioning Luiz's experience in elite European competition, which tells you exactly where this club's ambitions lie this season and beyond. Nuna Vaz, Parte 3, Jota Silva Sacrifice, 4,500 to 5. 000 characters. But wait, the next update reveals the brutal reality of squad management that will divide the Forest faithful completely. That will show you the dark side of football success. While we're celebrating new arrivals who rejected Manchester City and cost Juventus 50 million euros, one of our own is so desperate to leave, so convinced his future lies elsewhere, that he's willing to take a significant pay cut to make it happen, willing to sacrifice the financial security that most people can only dream of. Jota Silva has agreed to sacrifice part of his 55,000 per week wages just to secure a move back to Sporting CP. And his story is both heartbreaking and brutally honest about modern football reality. This is where football shows its ruthless side, where the beautiful game reveals its ugly underbelly, even at a club with Forest family values and community spirit. The Portuguese winger, who arrived with such hope and potential, who set a record previously held by Jason Lee for most Forest appearances as a substitute, managed just 5 Premier League starts last season under Nuno despite being fit and available for selection. Let that sink in for a moment. A player earning $55,000 per week, nearly £3 million per year, enough money to buy houses for entire families, made just 5 starts for us in the most important league in world football. It's a harsh reminder that football is unforgiving even when you're doing everything right professionally, even when you're training hard and keeping your mouth shut and waiting for your chance like a model professional. Silva earned those wages through his contract, negotiated in good faith by agents and clubs who believed in his potential, but he knows the writings on the wall in permanent marker. With Omari Hutchinson arriving from Ipswich after an incredible championship season, James McAtee on loan from City with Pep's personal blessing, and Arnaud Kalimwendo signed from PSG for serious money, there's simply no room for him in Nuno's tactical plans for this season or next. Sporting CP manager Rui Borges, who previously worked with Silva at Vitória, where the player flourished and showed the form that convinced Forest to sign him in the first place, has been tracking his former protege for months, has been whispering in his ear about returning to Portugal, where football is played differently, where technical players are appreciated more than physical specimens. The Portuguese press are reporting that Silva was absolutely brilliant under Borges, that he was the best player in the squad, which explains the mutual interest and the manager's determination to reunite with his former star. But here's the kicker that shows Silva's desperation and professionalism in equal measure. He's actually volunteering to take less money, potentially thousands of pounds per week less, just to get regular football again, just to feel like a footballer rather than a highly paid training ground participant. You have to respect the lad's honesty about his situation, his willingness to admit defeat and move on, even if it stings to see a Forest player so eager to leave the City ground, so convinced that his future lies elsewhere. The brutal truth that no one wants to admit is that Silva never truly established himself under Nuno, unable to dislodge Anthony Elanga or Callum Hudson-Odoi from the starting 11, despite showing flashes of real quality in training and brief substitute appearances. Yeah, part 4, Carmona swap deal, 4,500 to 5,000 caracteres. But hang on. The next bombshell involves a potential swap deal that could revolutionize our defensive options while showcasing the clever business brain of Ross Wilson and his recruitment team. Forest are reportedly chasing Sevilla's Jose Angel Carmona in a deal that could see David Carmo heading in the opposite direction. And this potential transfer represents everything smart about modern football business when it's done properly by people who understand both markets and player psychology. The 23-year-old Spanish right back carries a $12 million price tag that would normally be beyond our reach. But Forest are exploring a cash plus player offer that makes perfect sense for all parties involved and could solve multiple problems with one clever piece of business. Here's where it gets absolutely fascinating from a pure business perspective, where you can see the chess-playing brilliance of our recruitment team. Carmo, who's never made a single competitive appearance for Forest, despite arriving from Porto 12 months ago for significant money that could have been spent elsewhere, is reportedly very popular with the Sevilla hierarchy, who have been tracking Portuguese defenders for months. The centre-back spent last season on loan at Olympiacos, where he actually played well enough to catch the attention of Spanish scouts and prove that his talent wasn't the problem, just a fit with our tactical system under Nuno. He's valued at around $10 million according to Portuguese sources close to the deal, which means Forest would need to find just $2 million in cash plus Carmo's transfer to make the numbers work mathematically. Spanish newspaper AS, which isn't known for making up transfer stories or printing speculation without solid sources, claims that everything seems to fit for this swap to happen, especially with Sevilla desperately needing to replace Loic Bade, who's joining Bayer Leverkusen and leaving a massive hole in their defensive structure. Carmona would solve Forest's desperate need for right-back cover, a problem highlighted brutally against Brentford when Nuno had no natural replacements for Ola Aina and Nico Williams on the bench, when injury or suspension could have left us playing central defenders out of position. The sight of Nuno looking down his bench for fullback options and finding none, finding midfielders and forwards but no defenders, must have been deeply concerning for anyone thinking about European campaigns where squad depth becomes absolutely crucial. The fact that Omar Richards and Eric da Silva Moreira weren't even in the matchday squad tells you everything about their futures at the club. They're not in Nuno's plans. They're not trusted with Premier League football, period. This potential swap represents genuinely smart business from Ross Wilson and his team, moving on a player who doesn't fit our tactical system while addressing a genuine squad weakness that could derail our European ambitions before they even begin. It's the kind of creative deal-making that separates elite recruitment teams from the rest, finding solutions that help multiple clubs while strengthening your own position in the market. Carmona has La Liga experience against the best attackers in Spain. He's 23, so he fits perfectly into our age profile for long-term planning. And most importantly, he wants to come to England to test himself against Premier League wingers. When Spanish fullbacks are choosing Forest over other English clubs, you know something special is happening at the City Ground. Something that transcends mere money and enters the realm of genuine sporting ambition. And part A5, Demirovic target. 4,500 of 5,000 caracteres. Alright, hold tight, because the fourth revelation exposes just how ambitious this Forest project has become under Marinaki's ownership. How far we've traveled from championship survival to Premier League dominance dreams. Though despite already signing 8 players this summer, including 2 strikers in Igor Jesus and Arnau Calimuendo, despite spending over $100 million in just 3 months of transfer activity, Forest are reportedly still interested in Stuttgart's Ermaden Demirovic, who carries a staggering $35 million price tag that would make him our record signing by a considerable margin. Let me put that number in proper perspective for you. Let me explain exactly what this means for our club's trajectory. 3 years ago, we were signing players for $2 to $3 million and hoping desperately that they could keep us in the championship. praying that League One wasn't our ultimate destination. Now we're being seriously linked with $35 million strikers while already having Chris Wood, who cost us $25 million and was our record signing until about 5 minutes ago, leading our line with authority and goals. The 27-year-old Bosnia and Herzegovina international managed an incredible 17 goals last season despite struggling for regular minutes at Stuttgart. Despite being rotated and substituted and generally underused by coaches who didn't understand his qualities, which tells you absolutely everything about his natural ability when given the chance to express himself properly. These weren't tap-ins either. These weren't penalties and deflections. This is a striker who can create something from nothing, who can change games with individual brilliance, who can score the kind of goals that win European ties and Premier League matches. But here's the significant stumbling block that could derail this entire pursuit. That could bring us crashing back down to earth. Stuttgart are understandably reluctant to sell their star asset in the final weeks of the transfer window, and Demirovic himself is only interested in a top offer that reflects his status as one of the Bundesliga's most lethal finishers. The fact that Forest are even being mentioned alongside a player of this caliber, alongside clubs like Leeds United, who are a championship giant with massive resources and Premier League ambitions, shows exactly how far we've traveled under Marinakis' ambitious ownership and Wilson's smart recruitment. Get Football News Germany, which specializes in Bundesliga transfers and has contacts throughout German football, reports that Forest remain interested and are monitoring the situation closely, suggesting this isn't just idle speculation from agents trying to drive up prices, but genuine pursuit from the highest levels of our club. The question becomes whether Marinakis is willing to stretch the budget even further after already investing over $100 million this summer window. Whether he believes Demirovic represents the final piece of the puzzle or just an expensive luxury we can't afford. Adding Demirovic to a front line that already includes Wood, Taiwo Awoniyi, Jesus, and Kalimuendo would give Nuno incredible depth for both Premier League survival battles and European campaigns where rotation becomes absolutely essential. It's exactly the kind of statement signing that would announce Forest's return to elite competition after 30 years in the wilderness. Exactly the kind of transfer that would make our rivals sit up and take notice. When you're competing directly with Leeds United for signature players, when you're being mentioned in the same breath as clubs spending $35 million on single players, you know you've arrived at a completely different level of football business entirely. Ruial Parte 6, Conclusão Épica, 4,505. Shio Yo 0 Caracteres. Forest faithful, if this transfer earthquake has already left you breathless, if these revelations have already shattered everything you thought you knew about our club's limitations, imagine what's coming in the next 72 hours before the window slams shut on September 1st at exactly 7 p.m. We've witnessed a Brazilian international choose the City ground over Manchester City and Aston Villa, rejecting Pep Guardiola's personal phone calls and Villa's emotional appeals to return home. A Portuguese winger so desperate to leave, he'll sacrifice $55,000 per week wages and financial security that most people can only dream of. A Spanish right-back potentially arriving in a shrewd swap deal that showcases Ross Wilson's tactical brilliance and understanding of international markets. And a $35 million striker target that proves our ambitions know absolutely no bounds whatsoever in this new era of Forest football. But here's what should terrify every rival fan reading this. What should make Derby County supporters wake up in cold sweats at 3 a.m. What should have Leicester City fans questioning their own club's direction and commitment to success. These 5 stories represent just the beginning of what Evangelos Marinakis has planned for this football club. Just the opening chapter of a story that could redefine English football hierarchy forever. The contract details on Douglas Luiz alone, with that $25 million obligation clause triggered automatically by appearances, show a level of financial commitment that goes far beyond typical loan deals and enters the realm of permanent investment in elite talent. This isn't, let's see how he gets on and maybe think about keeping him. This is, we want this player permanently and we're willing to pay serious money for him regardless of what happens this season. When you combine that unwavering commitment with our willingness to chase $35 million strikers, conduct complex international swap deals involving Spanish giants, and attract players who literally reject Manchester City to join us, you're looking at a football club that's been completely transformed from the relegation battlers of just 2 seasons ago into something unrecognizable and magnificent. Nuno Espiritu Santo now has a squad capable of competing seriously on 4 different fronts. Premier League survival isn't even the goal anymore. It's European glory, domestic cup runs, and establishing ourselves as a permanent fixture in the top half of English football's elite division that defines success at the City Ground. The fact that we're attracting players who cost Juventus over 50 million, who've represented their countries at international level with distinction, who've played Champions League football against Barcelona and Real Madrid, tells you absolutely everything about the trajectory of this football club under Marinakis' ambitious and seemingly unlimited financial backing. Ross Wilson's recruitment strategy is bearing fruit in ways that seemed impossible just 3 years ago when we were celebrating championship survival like a major trophy. The transformation from second-tier strugglers to Europa League participants, from bargain basement signings to Brazilian internationals, represents one of the most dramatic rises in modern English football history. So here's your final challenge, Forest faithful. If you believe this chaos is just the beginning of something truly special, if you think Brian Clough would be proud of what's happening at his beloved City Ground, if you believe we're destined for greatness that will echo through generations, prove your loyalty now with your like, your comment, and your subscription. Let's show Derby, Leicester, and every other rival that when Nottingham Forest rises, we rise together as one unstoppable force of nature. And trust me, what's coming next in the final days of this transfer window will make today's revelations look like gentle summer breeze compared to the hurricane that's about to hit English football and change everything forever.